Hello, Chameleon Academy, and good Saturday afternoon to you all. I am here with the death. Oh, I forgot it's the coffee that Howard sent me. Um, Death Wish, yes, Death Wish coffee. That's what we got going on today. And so, I've been told that this is like 2 times the caffeine, but I am not feeling it. So, yep, we are waiting for Jonathan to join us, and so we will just start this off like we always do, where I say hello to everybody, like Juan, who said hello to me. Thank you very much, Juan, and uh, good to have you all here. And let's see, even though 2 times the caffeine is not enough, yeah, you know what? I've tried this Death Wish coffee, and it's supposed to be 2 times caffeine, but I'm just not feeling it. Hello, James. Good to see you. And reminder to people on Facebook, if you are on Facebook joining us, I'm not going to be able to see your name because Facebook doesn't allow me to invade your privacy like that. Not unless I pay. Then they'll sell your name to anybody. So if you're on Facebook, please do what James has done here and just put your name at the end of it. Or else just go to YouTube, and that takes care of everything. Hello, Justin. Hello, Dean. Sorry, Dean Missmer. Hello, all. And Chris is here. Well, today we are, let's see, trying to get a hold, see where Jonathan is. We're not sure what's going on. Hope he's not having a problem with it, but we're going to go ahead and go forward and go on with our show. So we have an enthusiastic Mr. Bill. Hello. And Steve is there, and goods from Eliza. She's been having problems with Entamoeba invadens, a parasite with her chameleon, and it is now she's now taking care of it. So and hello, Justin, and we have our friend from Belgium. Welcome. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into the topic of the day, and that topic is the difference between keeper care and breeder care. And this is something we definitely I feel I really want to frame it because the way I've been talking about it, it sounds like I'm saying if you're a breeder, you've got improper husbandry, you've compromised your husbandry because you don't have a fully planted 2 by 2 by 4 foot tall cage that has fog. And oh, hey,
Bill.
Jonathan.
Sorry,
Let's see.
I was getting my coffee ready.
Oh, getting your coffee. Okay, that is appropriate. So good. I've been introducing that perhaps I need to pull back a little bit because when I've been talking before, I've been talking about the difference between breeder care and keeper care, and it's been sounding very black and white. So as if I am saying if the breeders don't have a 2 by 2 by 4 foot tall, heavily planted cage, fogging, that it's improper care. And although we've used some of those elements as examples, I do want to say that in my mind, when I start getting in thinking about breeders that are that I have problems with, it's more on the line of adults that are kept in what 5-7 inch wide cages, females that are kept together, babies that are group raised, and that's where I start thinking that's where I'm having problems. When we
Yeah.
start talking about, I don't want to start saying and send everybody off and say you've got improper care if you don't have a 2 by 2 by 4 foot tall, heavily planted cage, because yeah, okay, an experienced person knows that Chameleon uses what the top 2.5 feet, And so if you cut the cage down in size, you can make it work. But I guess the question then becomes how how far can you cut it to the point where you're starting to compromise the husbandry? And I know there's no black and white clear answer on that. I'll
Hmm.
go ahead and let you give your input on that. And the wonderful thing, I always value bringing on a guest because it's a different perspective, different ideas, and it's only those shows that I can actually drink my coffee. So go.
Yeah, well, see, now I can't drink mine, but
Yeah,
I
well,
I so I the way I look at it is not how far can you cut it, but is like what are they trying to do to do better, right? So if it looks like they are trying to find how far they can cut it, like they're trying to balance in that direction, then that's already a red flag to me. As if I was a customer, I would want to see the breeder trying to improve. I want to see like, hey, last year they were doing this. What are they doing this year? Are they trying something new? Are they doing something to improve the quality of life of their breeding stock and the animals that they're raising? Um, so the practical question is like to me already a red flag. Like if someone is already trying to figure out what that boundary is on the lower end of care, um,
okay.
uh, because that's not interesting and it's also not what I would want to motivate people to do. Like I as a customer, I would want people to be motivated to go out and search for ways to improve the lives of their animals because I want to reward that person for doing that. Um, the so that I'd say that first. As far as the practical, like where are you starting to get into the neglect versus like is it okay type of a thing. I like you said, I don't think it's a black and white thing because there's so many care parameters. Cage size is only one of them, right? So like you could see somebody with a large cage but they didn't set it up well so that they can't utilize the space.
Hmm.
They don't have correct basking locations, don't have much of a gradient. It's just like one hollow box with a stick in the middle, right? That even if it's a big enough cage is an issue, right? So you can't just look at one dimension, and that's why it's not black and white. Um, so what I would consider is, I think, I mean, you did a really good episode on um, looking at four different dimensions, right? Heat, UVB, humidity, and security, right?
Yep.
So
Yep.
I would say, does the cage have those things, right? The If it's a little bit small, but it still provides all the gradients and security that the animal needs, I'd be less concerned about that than a large cage that's sparsely planted and only has like a dowel right through the middle, right? So um, I think that's it's going to be something that after someone has been educated about what a chameleon needs, that they can make an educated decision about whether or not that's there or not. Um,
Okay.
it's not something that's is that what do you think about that, Bill?
Uh, yeah, I agree. I agree. But that's something that you and I can take a look at and make a judgment at. Right now, between our interview and this session here,
Uh huh.
I realized so many things that we're talking about are I'd say at the experienced level, the advanced level. We can take a
Yeah,
look
yeah, yeah.
at these cages. We can say, okay, you've crossed the line. But I'm trying to figure out
Like
how do
how
we
does a beginner do that?
yeah, yeah. How does a beginner say, okay, how do you I mean, I can come up with I would say a black and white is do they individually raise their babies? That's an easy one.
Yep.
That we know is proper chameleon husbandry. Group raising babies is not proper. I will
Oh,
put my a line in the sand on that one.
yeah, but the gray is at what
Oh
age?
boy.
So, right? Because no, and this is something I'm seeing happen, right? So people start to individually raise them at different times, right? So sometimes
Uh-huh.
it'll
Okay.
be
All right. Yeah.
6 weeks in or 4 weeks in. Sometimes it'll be right out of the egg. Um, Whereas going individual from 3 months up, right? So there's a couple of differences there, right? Some people will say they're individually raised, like I did right when I started. I had them in bins, and then I broke them out at about 4 to 6 weeks into individual cages on my first clutch. And I said that was individually raised, right? Um, because they were
Okay.
in.
Yeah.
And so but that it's like, are they individually raised right out of the egg versus individually raised at a point at which they can hurt each other physically? um and I think that's that's where the gray comes from.
Well, at this point, I mean, I see it as a black and white. I see it as from the egg, individually
Individually
raised,
raised.
because from the egg, they can stress each other. Yes, they're
Yes.
not powerful enough to physically damage,
Yep.
but they're still exerting stress.
Exactly. and
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 so, yeah,
and and they're not going to grow at the optimal rate. They're also going to have issues growing at the like that top rate if they're competing and losing in that space, even when they're small. Yes.
yeah, and so I think that's a line that I will put forth if anybody's looking for a panther chameleon, look for a breeder that individually raises, because that is an easy black and white.
Yep.
Now, obviously, breeders can uh, number one, they can not be truthful. They can
Hmm.
individually raise enough that fits onto the camera, and then the rest of them are bin raised. And
Yep.
you know,
Yep. Like the
you just
display,
know
like the
when you get
display
one
case
that
type case.
yeah, and then you know when you get one that has that telltale half moon bite mark. Oh, okay, yeah, it doesn't sound like individually raised here.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And I
but
and you can check. So like sometimes it's so for example, if someone says they're individually raising and then they have 6 clutches hatch, um,
yeah, mhm,
then they
so
better
yeah,
have
so
they better have like 300 cages, right? So
yeah,
the that's
so yeah,
that
so we're
that's the type of check you can do in your head as if you're watching to say, oh, this is how many clutches they say they have, and then how many cages do they
mhm,
have?
yeah, yeah, and I'm there are more people going on social media. I mean, when you see on Instagram, you can see Fram's cams, and you are seeing an entire basement filled with cages
Yep.
all over the
Just loaded.
place.
Yep.
And so, I mean, that's being transparent, and you see that they have the cages, and and yeah, we all can plan, and then for some reason the clutches synchronize and decide, hey, I'm
We're
not
all
going to
hatching
wait, and
now.
so they come at the same time. And
Hmm.
so there are times what's not black and white is I say what's black and white is your policy, and this is what I strive for. But we all know sometimes things happen.
Yep.
I planned for my clutch of Jackson's, my Panther chameleon. All of a sudden, my Jackson's decides to give me a
Come out.
bunch. Well, okay, I've got an issue. But the important thing is that I'm working to mitigate that issue, and I don't present this as this is acceptable husbandry. And I think
Yes, yes.
that's an
That
important part.
yeah, that's one thing I think is important is like, hey, when things don't go the way you planned, don't justify it as like, ah, it's fine, and anybody else can do this too. You want to say, hey, this was a mistake. I didn't want to do this. Um,
Yeah.
and make it clear that you don't need to try to justify the mistake. Just let it be. You know, that's
No, you don't have to present it, just work behind the scenes to take care of it.
yeah. Yep.
Well, okay, it looks like cool. I like John. Okay, it looks like there's somebody out there who likes you, John.
Hi, Stinky.
And
That's what I see over here.
and now, oh, it's spreading. It's getting contagious.
Uh, thanks, guys. Uh,
So, yeah, I've and and it, things we see the main problem, and I think what's really driving this discussion here
mhm.
is the breeders who have and large collection keepers. I mean, it happens to us too, to where we get so good at the compromised husbandry that we start thinking, well, I'm an expert, so when somebody gets to this level, they can do what I'm doing, and so this is expert level care. Where
Yeah,
I
it's a
think
kind of
that's a dangerous
entitlement.
point.
Yeah,
Um,
it's a kind of like a form of entitlement where someone thinks they've earned it to some degree. Um, which
or it's even a badge of honor. Yeah, I know how to bin
yeah,
raise, and if everybody's
it,
wondering about, well, how come some people bin raise and say it's okay, and some people individually raise? I'll say, talk to the people who are bin raising. What does it take to bin raise? And
mhm,
they will tell you, well, you got to know when to separate the bullies, and you take out the big ones, and you do all this uh, size adjustment. I know, I've been there.
mhm,
I've been doing it. I
yeah,
did that for decades. I know how to do it, and I know what it takes to do it. And the second that you have to say, well, you got to know which ones to separate, that in itself is an admission that this is a compromise. This is not good. So, I
mhm,
mean,
yeah,
that's
yep,
one way to, if you are trying to figure out between all these people saying it's okay, people saying it's not okay, well, ask them how they make it work. And let's see. Okay,
yep.
so Katrina is. It looks like she's going to be getting a yellow body blue
Yellow
bar.
body blue bar. Hey, we've got reds now. There's
You
more
got
than just
reds.
yellow.
Oh,
Yeah,
are they producing?
yeah, yeah. The first Ralph clutch is out to its new homes now, and I'm raising the second one now. So Ralph is my red body blue bar, and
Okay.
Cosmo's my other one, and he's got some that are going to be hatching this summer too. So I'll have two unrelated red body blue bar combos.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Jonathan,
Yeah, branching out.
that's right. Just says treat your animals how you want to be treated. So you want to be
Yep.
stuck in a room with your brothers and sisters? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
No, I think the other um there's a lot of really interesting debates that we're still having in the community, right? And I think that after our conversation, um, one of the things that came up is like, well, do you make judgments based on where you sit on that debate, where it's not black and white, um, where the standard isn't clear to you as a customer, um, and to some degree, I'm sympathetic to that. Like, yeah, there is some gray, but for me, there's no gray, right? Because I have an opinion about it, right?
mhm. Okay.
So when I heard that, I was like, yeah, objectively speaking, there's a lot of different options out there, and there are some gray areas where we're still figuring things out. But the way I look at that is like you as a person have an opinion on that debate, and you can act on that. Like, there's no big deal about that. So like natural versus plastic, hydrate various hydration strategies. If you want to promote fogging as a customer and you want to say, hey, this breeder did an awesome job with fogging, and I'm going to reward them for that, that's great. Like, I think that's cool. So to me, when I hear a lot of these debates, even some of the more cutting edge stuff, I think it's a good thing if people act upon their opinions and recognize that it is an opinion that they're trying to promote. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
and like, I really don't see anything wrong with that, or any kind of like intellectual conundrum, because at the end of the day, you're just going to act on what you believe, um, even if
Yeah.
you know it's a debate.
Yeah. And this is a very tricky subject to bring up. And because somebody could all of a sudden just go crazy and decide that to blast all the breeders that are not up with the absolute latest in
Yeah,
husbandry. And uh
and that's risky.
very soft spot in my heart for breeding. they are the cornerstone of our community. We need them. We need the captive hatched, and they're the ones who got us where we are. We would not be here without the breeders. So
Sure.
I don't want to go start throwing mud at breeders, uh, but
Yeah,
there is.
I know your concern as a breeder, right? So I know that it's like, yeah, we don't want people to go around and do that. Um, but again, it's like, read the room, right? I as someone who does want to advance various practices, there's a way to do it with tact and grace, and then there's like jumping onto their random like promotional post with your venom, right? So like the
Yeah.
the you can engage them in a private conversation. You can there's a lot of ways to do it with that are totally fine and that most breeders are open to. The you and then there's ways to do it that are just kind of childish, and like like self-promoting, like you're just trying to show that you're better than everybody on a public space, type of a thing.
Yeah, Howard's got a point here. We need to show them the risk. We need to show them the cost to the chameleon from not separating them from birth. And and this is one of the things that's very clear in my mind. And I am definitely willing to go on record of saying, judge your breeders by whether they separate the babies at birth, and
Hmm.
that is a valid way to do it, and that's a market risk. If you're and it's a marketing feature, so to speak, if we're talking about this in completely business and marketing manner. If we
Hmm.
have a sophisticated audience that is educated in chameleon husbandry, they can make a difference, especially if there becomes a segment of the population that will specifically look for breeders that individually raise. That's going to create breeders that individually raise, because not only is that the market pressure, but also these breeders love their chameleons, and
Yeah,
nobody got into
of course.
chameleon breeding because they thought it was a good business decision. They
Well,
sacrificed the ability to make a whole lot more with a whole lot less work to do something that they love. And so, if you give them the opportunity to provide better husbandry and you're rewarding them for that, I think we're going to see a number of them jumping at that chance. Right now, there's a
yeah,
pressure to compete, and we can say that that's not how animal raising should be, but it's a reality that we
yeah.
should acknowledge.
Well, I mean, it's a free market, so it's by definition there's competition.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but
Now, okay, I want to take a break. Oh, first of all, let's just say, back here, um,
there's a question.
yeah, Dean, I don't drink. It
I
says I don't drink coffee. Am I even allowed here? Dean, we do allow people. Chameleons and Coffee is mostly for me. I've got Chameleons and Coffee, so you can join in with coffee or not. That's okay. Uh, but all right, we're not going to get onto this. There is a question. What are your thoughts about people who sell eggs and say they can tell the sex of the eggs and what they will be? Um, that is an episode's in itself. But
do you want me? Do you want me? Do you want me to? Do you
go
want me to
ahead,
give a quick?
go ahead and answer that. But know that we're not going to get onto this topic because we'll just
We'll
go
respond and
forever.
move on, right? So
Yes.
the uh, so here's what I'll say about that. Uh, Panther chameleons have genotypic determined sex. It's not environmental, right? We know the genotype of a male. We know the genotype of a female. So it's not temperature or environment that determines the sex. When someone says that they can determine the sex of an egg, what they're saying is that they can understand what chromosomes are in the egg in a non-invasive way. Because an easy way is you crack the egg open, you get some genetic material, you run it through a test, um, and then you figure out if it was male or female, but it's dead. So the only technique that you could use is some way to understand the chromosomes inside the egg without killing it. One of those techniques is spectroscopy. Spectroscopy. There's a couple of others, but that's one of the more common ones. It's extremely difficult, takes a lot of research, and it's not going to happen. There's sometimes people will say like they had a clutch of all males, and therefore the next clutch is probably all males. That type of urban myth. It's actually the opposite. Given that their genotypic determines sex, if that female spent 20 of her male uh, eggs already, then she's actually more likely to have females in the next one, because it's like if you had a bag of marbles, 40 males, 40 females, and you spend 20 of the males, you actually have 40 females left and 20 males left, and you're twice as likely to have females in the next batch. So,
So you're saying that the
so you,
female is determining the sex.
correct. Yeah, and they also will say like the sire produces males, which is funny because the genotype which determines sex in panther chameleons is the female. The female has two different types of chromosomes. The male has two Z's. So the male can't determine the sex. The female is the only one that can determine the sex.
Okay.
So that's the science behind it, and that's why it's like when someone says it, usually they have a bunch of cockamamie theories that they're like, oh, this male produces males, or the temperature, or like whatever it is, they're all false. Like it, I
Yeah,
haven't heard
Nicholas,
anybody who actually knows what they're talking about selling eggs that
I,
are
I would
of one
also
sex or
look at
another.
the fine print and realize what's
Yeah, yeah.
behind that guarantee. Uh,
It's like we'll give you a male if it
that
hatches
what's
female type
behind
of.
that guarantee. Yeah, it also includes you spending more money, either
Hmm.
buying a male that's already been born, or whatever it is you're paying overnight shipping. And so whatever guarantee is going with that sex is requires more money out of your pocket. So
Exactly. It's not a
that's
no money down. It's a you
yeah,
put more
I'm
in.
not terribly happy about how that all is
Yeah, they're often
being
looking to
done.
try to swap out like a future male with a fully raised female that they can just breed immediately. So they're like trying to have other people raise their females for them, basically.
Yeah. All right. Let's see. All right, we got Ryan's here. We'll take a little some comments from the crew. To always tell people when selling chameleon, research their native climate. There's much about where they are from, and refer to Chameleon Academy. Well,
Yeah,
I will agree with that.
that's like
It's,
factual statement.
yeah, and let's see, Stinky. You know this person?
I don't, but they
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah.
hello, Stinky.
But yeah, thank you.
So yes, John actually did a great episode on Animal at Home. That's another podcast and goes really into depth this, and it's a great episode. Uh, Jonathan has been making the rounds on podcast.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see. Stephanie's here. Patrick, hello.
Hey guys.
And what is this? It's like we have a Jonathan fan club here. John is cool. We should have John on more often, Bill. I
Thanks,
tell you.
guys. Yeah.
Well, I suppose that would allow me to get to the bottom of my coffee more often.
Yeah. Well, um, so with the breeder keeper care question though, um, I I I think that the most of the breeders that I talk to and that I enjoy working with are people that, regardless of their faults, like their current mistakes, their current challenges that they're working through, you can tell that they're sincerely trying to improve. They're trying to do better. Um, and that's, to me, is the difference, is that like a keeper should be trying to do better too, but they only have one. Like it's a lot easier, or maybe they have two or three or four. But regardless, the breeder's challenge is huge because of successive clutches hatching, market pressures. Like inflation last year was bad for a lot of people. They thought they'd be able to sell their animals from 3 to 5 months, but they had to hold them to 6 or 8. because the market just wasn't there. So that stuff is really hard to plan for, and like I sympathize with people who couldn't see that coming, right? Um, but there's a difference between like these external things that they can't control and the things that they can control and what they have kind of set out to do as a breeder and how they're approaching their project. And that's kind of the way that I try to judge it, is like, are they sincerely doing their best to get past those challenges and provide the best care that they can, or are they coming up with excuses and justifying the current state, even if it is a bad situation? And so that's kind of the way I think about that, is just that recognize that breeders do have more challenges, so you can't just always judge them based on what you see immediately. You've got to try to judge them based on what it seems like they're trying to do, what their intentions are, and how did they get into the situation that they're in if it's not what you would want to see. And then you could judge whether you want to help them out, right? And and I think that there are situations where it's like you can see that it's not ideal, but um, there's somebody that you want to support for one reason or another, and I think that that's cool too, um, because it's hard. Like it's really hard to be a breeder, and I can say it's like there's there's a lot of moments where you're just stressed out and you feel like you're failing constantly. Um,
Mhm.
so that to me is important to know too.
Well, let's talk to the people who are thinking about becoming breeders and they'd like to become an ethical breeder. They'd like to start with right where we are right now, what we know right now,
Hmm.
and do it right.
Do it right.
What would your advice be as to how to start and build, say, with the best of husbandry?
Um, well, yeah. First is set up your adults as in the using live plants. Do your best to get their hydration um, going, whether it be with fog and other things. Um, I would say get your adults squared away, and then as far as how you scale that project, you want to make sure you start with enough cages for a 30 egg clutch. So at least 30 cages right off the bat would is a great thing to start with. And you could do a mix of smaller cages and juvenile cages, knowing that you're going to have to hold on to females longer. You're going to need juvenile cages for those girls. Um, and I always think about it like I want to have at least 30 cages per breeding female, nursery cages, and then I need at least 15 juvenile enclosures per breeding female, because roughly half are going to be females, and you could hold on to them for a while. So make sure
Mhm.
you have your female cages for when they are 3 to 6 months old, and then uh, you always want to have some cages ready for holdbacks and adults and other things. So I always try to keep some vacant adult cages too, um, just so that when somebody's ready to go from a juvenile up, you've got a cage for them. You're not holding them in a juvenile longer than you need to. So that's how I think about it.
Well, here is the biggest challenge when it comes to, I mean, getting 30 nursery cages and 15 juvenile cages. That's a that's a huge expense. That's a huge
Yeah.
investment, but that's
Yeah.
clear cut.
Yep.
What about adult cages? What would you recommend that the breeder would have to provide an adult to be efficient, effective, ethical, and all that wonderful stuff?
I mean, so with my females, I like to put them in like a large reptibreeze, um, with and I have a lot of them. They're like bioactive planted, so that
So
they
the
can just
36 inch.
yeah, the 36 by 18s. and I have the bottom with landscaping fabric to hold in the uh, soil layer. I have drainage under that, and then plants in the soil with leaves and isopods and springtails, and that is the base of my female enclosures, so that um, if they need to lay, they can go down there and they can lay. If I can see that they're starting to look, then you have your sand and like lay bins ready to move her out, just so she doesn't tear up your roots and everything. Sometimes if they plant into that bio, it's hard to find. But that's my strategy with females, because it works really well for me. I've seen a lot of people where they try to, you know, put bins in the bottom and take them out and like do the like constantly maintain bins in their females. But I find that those get dirty, especially as you have a bunch of females and you're going to have to just spend a lot of time maintaining those lay bins. And so I was like, well, why don't I just make that bioactive with springtails and isopods and everything, so that they're in there helping me keep it clean. Um, and so that's how I thought about that for female care. And that's the biggest challenge as you scale. And I think that I saw uh, Mighty Morphin Reptiles, Ryan over there.
Yeah.
It's true. You need a lot of space. Like you
Yeah.
really do need a lot of space for your adult cages. Um, so plan for those females and males. I I I tend to have a lot of these like larger enclosures for my males, and I'm not like, if I don't have small cages for my adult males. I have them all in XLs as a minimum. I think that's small. I'd like it to be bigger. Um, but I think that's a good minimum standard even for breeders, and so you just need space.
Yeah, CCT Reptiles talking about just started breeding, got my first eggs, and already has 60 individual cages set
Wow.
up. I
Very
look forward to
cool.
it.
Very cool.
And I want to say there's another aspect to this. And so CTG Reptiles is doing it right, and is doing it right by the chameleon. But there's also the dimension that uh, they're doing it right for themselves.
Yeah.
Uh, we get into breeding because we want the experience. We love the experience. There is few things that are a greater joy to me than hatching out a chameleon and raising the chameleon up. I love breeding chameleons, but the one thing that saps joy out of it is when all of a sudden I have 3, 4 clutches that came, and now it's all work, and I am taking care of, and I'm keeping them. This is back in my bin day, and I'm just trying to separate them out and make more bins so they don't bite each other. And I'm not having fun. And yeah, when it's all done and the dust settles, I'm going, wow, I'm a breeder. Wow, great. But I didn't have fun.
Yeah.
And if you've got 60 individual cages, you're going to be
You're
able
gonna
to
have a
have fun.
blast,
I mean, it's going to be a lot of work.
but it's still like,
You're going to be spending a lot of time cleaning cages and stuff, but you're going to have fun. You're not
yeah.
going to be worrying about your babies.
And the thing that is really cool as a breeder, when you have 60 individual cages and you're watching all those males color up individually, that is so much fun. Like you're going cage by cage, you're trying to figure out which one you want to keep. You get a really good look at them all because they're all looking great. And you can actually see what's in the clutch. The people that group raise, they'll see like one alpha that has color, and then there's a bunch of brown chameleons, and they're
Yeah.
all docile. They're all like, "Don't hurt me," and you can't see what's in that clutch. You see the alpha, and that's it. And you 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 genetically speaking, and as far as fun goes, like I personally, that's what I'm looking for when I breed, is I want to find that the holdback. I want to find the genetics that I want to keep going in the project, and like and that's what part of what makes it fun is actually having a chance to improve on your breeding stock. And when you don't have the capacity to do it ethically, you also don't have the capacity to actually improve. You're going to send off your nicest animals by accident. Like people are going to get them, and then you're going to be really upset. So less fun.
Yeah. Well, I'll also say, and here's, I would want to keep them all. Katrina, yes,
Yeah.
this is part of it because when you individually raise each baby, you get to know each baby. You get to know which ones are not doing so well. So it's not like, bin raising, all of a sudden there's a baby on the ground, it's dead. Oh, what happened? I don't know. But when you individually raise them, you are monitoring each and every one. And okay, that one's pooped, that one's pooped, that one's not pooping, that one's not eating. What's going on? You know which one is not eating.
Yep.
And so you're able to give them individual care. Now, okay, you're going to go to the other side and say, oh, but now you're helping weak ones, but that's another discussion
We are.
that I don't know that we want to touch on here. But the fact is, you get to know each one's personality, and and yes, you get attached. I'll say that.
Yeah, you
Let's
do.
see, we got some other comments
It's really
here.
tough. So
Yeah, let's see. Ryan's got does 1 to 2 clutches a year. Otherwise, it's not fun, especially when you add customer service, marketing skills. Yeah, I mean, Ryan.
Yep.
Yeah, Ryan knows he's been doing this, and I, and this is a personal thing for me as well. When I had the pleasure of having 4 different species hatch out at once, then it wasn't fun. I say, okay, yeah, check mark. Wow, I'm awesome. But then it just becomes so much work that I am not enjoying being a chameleon wrangler.
yeah.
And so I say, everybody, if you're, I know you want to be ambitious, you want to earn a lot of money so you can do this as your job. I would reconsider, because the reason, number one, if you want a job to make money, there are so many different easier ways to do it. And the thing is, when it gets to that level, it's a job, and you've turned what gives you pleasure into a job. So be very careful about going towards making this a career.
hmm
Uh, well, I'll break there. I got another point, but I'll let you jump in.
Yeah, it's I mean,
Although I can continue.
no, it's all good. I would just say that I think there's a question related to when it's profitable. Um, and when my project was profitable was probably 3 years in, 3 years into actually having babies. So not 3 years in when I got my breeders, but 3 years of selling babies. Um, and uh, that's because once you have your first clutch, your second clutch comes in, and you end up doubling down on your infrastructure before you actually make any money. um,
Mhm, mhm.
so that that's something that you have to account for, and that was for me with one female. I had just one female, um, and then I went from one female to two females, um, and at a certain point, you have enough infrastructure that you can accommodate your breeding stock, and you've got a good handle on the pace and things like that. That's when you start to become profitable. But while you're scaling, you're essentially taking all the money you make and plowing it right back into the project for at least a year, maybe 2 or 3, um, to get to a point where you are sustainable. Um, and if you make the mistake of taking money out, um, there's a big expense coming that'll kind of put you underwater and you'll be in trouble. So um, that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, and I want y'all to realize, when you decide you want to start breeding panther chameleons, so many people concentrate on getting eggs. That is not the hard part. That is easy. It's when the eggs hatch. That's the hard
Yeah,
part. And I will tell
yeah,
you from experience, I've seen this over and over and over again. That is when we lose our breeders. They just
yeah.
get totally overwhelmed. As soon as somebody goes on social media bragging about having 300 eggs in the incubator,
They're gone.
they're about to go down.
Yeah, and I think
I don't know what it is
Ryan
about
Ryan
300.
Ryan's question is probably a good segue, is about how to market yourself
Oh,
as
okay.
a breeder, um, and how, as a new chameleon breeder, because a lot of people come in and they're like, I have the
Yep.
best thing ever. And um, I think that it, the way that you market yourself is just by telling your story, telling people what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve, and and then being honest about whether you achieve it or not. Like if it and then that's interesting. They'll be like, oh, that now why didn't you achieve what you wanted to achieve, or why you did? What did you do to achieve your goal? Um, if you're out there engaging with people that way, um, I find myself following those people in listening. I want to hear their story. Um, so uh, that's how I think about it. Is you engage with this like you're trying to find someone who's going to listen to your story. You start your story early, right when you begin. If you're thinking you're going to breed, get
Mhm.
out there and talk about why you want to do it, what you're trying to do, and try to find people who are like-minded. Because if you start that when they're 3 months old, it's going to take a long time to make a sale, and you're going to be those animals are not going to be ready to go. You're going to have to either like wholesale or do something at 3 months that you wouldn't want to do, and it's going to make it less fun, less enjoyable. But if you do the groundwork, you get people listening to your story, then by the time you're ready to offer an animal, then they're there ready to get one.
I'd say for someone thinking about starting breeding, the first question I always ask is why? What are you bringing to the table? Why do
Yeah.
you think you can't just breed panther chameleons, show up with 30 and expect to sell them all unless you give people a reason to go to you? Because there's enough higher end breeders that have a reputation in the market and people trust those breeders. Why should they, instead of going with those breeders, go with you? And almost always, the answer to that question is, well, I'll sell them for cheaper. Wrong answer. That's the wrong answer. You are not going to survive that way, and you're just going to be a little sad blip in the market. Uh, no, there's got to be a reason why people can believe in you. And don't say,
Yeah.
I am offering the top quality Panther chameleons. Everybody says that. That's marketing. That's garbage. What is it that you're doing? What do you stand for? Jonathan started off and his what he brought to the market, individually raised Panther chameleons, and he focused on yellow body, blue
Yellow
bar
bodies.
Panther chameleons. That was Jonathan. That's what he brought to the market. What do you stand for? And why should people believe in you? What kind of higher purpose are you shooting for? Uh,
Hmm.
and there's no one answer, but you got to come up with something, not just here's Panther chameleons, buy it.
Yeah, that doesn't work. And a lot of people come in and and have trouble. Like
Oh yeah.
I prefer like Ryan and I have been around for a while, and Bill's even longer, but we see people breeding for the first time. It's one clutch and you're out. Like there's a lot of people who can't sustain over multiple years because it's so hard. Like it really, and it's the sales is the hard part. The finding homes for them at the end is a big challenge. And so figuring out how to explain why someone should get yours is really the hardest part. Um,
Here's an interesting question from Serenity.
yeah, it's a
Talking
good
about the
question. I
ethics
saw that.
of breeding and lack of knowledge among those who acquire these chameleons. So maybe we're talking about, and then talking a community doesn't offer lots of support to new owners. They tend to be judgmental. Curious
Hmm.
how breeders view that knowledge gap. Well, you're a breeder, and I'm the education guy, so
The
I guess this is
knowledge.
the right place. This is the place. I'm the
I,
one being the educator, so I guess this is the right place to answer the question.
yeah, I mean the easiest thing that I can do is like connect them with Bill's resources. Like I say, hey, you should check out the Chameleon Academy podcast. There's episodes on everything from poop to handling to hydration. I mean, you like run down the list. Every topic has been covered on that podcast. 5 times or more. And you could go on a, just a poop theme uh, r- run, and you could do like a week on that. I mean, there's so much content. Um, and so I try to, that's one of the first questions I ask people is like, where have you gotten your information to date? Are you familiar with this or that? Chameleon forums, Academy podcast. Um, what are some of the things you've heard so far, right? So we start that conversation um, in the beginning with people to try to address the knowledge gap and understand how big it is. Uh, I think that is the ethical approach. I don't think it's ethical to sell an animal without engaging in that conversation at all, because then you don't figure out what that gap is and whether or not the animal's going to go into a good situation. So I agree, it's not ethical to ignore the knowledge gap. Um, and those are some of the approaches that I take when I have a new person come to me.
And Serenity, um, this is a challenge because there is so much out there, and to the person who is just starting out, when they Google chameleon care, uh, often the first page is just like Petco and these big companies where they just hire people to create fluff articles. And so it is very difficult when you're first joining the community to know where to go. And I mean, we can tell people do your research all we want, but uh, if you're
It's got to be more
starting out,
specific.
you can do your
Yeah.
research and you can find a lot of garbage information, and there's no way to tell the difference because it's all presented as if this is the end all be all of information. And
Yeah.
then you go on.
Well,
What?
I would contend with that statement that there is a way to tell the difference. Like, there's a huge difference between you, Bill, and some of these random like robo pages on the internet. You're a real person. Like, we've heard your story, we know who you are, we know that you have evidence for what you're saying. You're not like, so I think that you can still judge the quality of the source of information as a consumer of information. You can't just like say it's not my responsibility. I saw this random thing on the internet and now I'm confused. Like, I'm sorry, I have no sympathy for that. But like
That is
you
true
you
to an extent, but I
it's
think you got to be further into the community before you figure out that I'm a real person. You
yeah,
people don't
but
know
it doesn't take long. Just go on YouTube. Like, I can see your face and I
that
hear
is
your
true.
story and I see a
I
whole
mean,
long list of things you've done.
what you have to do is you have to go to the website, you have to go
Yeah.
to the About Us page, you have to figure out who's behind the website, and then Google that name. And it's
Yeah.
amazing how many of those names end up with nothing on Google. But you got to
Yes.
go through those steps.
Yeah, it's research. It's a and when people say they do the research, I'm like, well, do you know how to do research? That's the first
Yeah,
question. But
that's the big
I,
thing.
I,
Uh,
because this is how the internet works, and I know I feel some sympathy for people who don't understand how the internet works. They don't know how to do research like that. I get it. Yeah, there's a lot of people out there like that, but it's a skill. It's like it's a life skill, and I think to the ethical question, like, is it ethical when there are people who don't know how to do their research that could potentially be buying from you? Um, the the I believe in personal responsibility, so like I will do what I think I can, but at the end of the day, everyone is responsible for their own decisions, their own actions, their own animals, and that's where I see it from an ethical standpoint. It's not my responsibility 100% to handhold them the whole time. I will help if they ask, but if they don't ask or they don't let me know and I'm ignorant to their problem, then that's where it's like, hey, you gotta talk. You gotta let me know. I'll help. But I don't feel like it's my responsibility to
mhm,
like,
okay.
I don't know, be a nanny state or
Well,
something.
yeah, we
You
can't
know, like,
can't do everything. Now,
yeah,
the second half
there's a
of
reasonable place where it breaks down. Yeah.
her question started. is the community tends to be judgmental.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I'm going to say, yeah, you go onto Facebook, Reddit, anywhere. It's like when you're new, it's like coming to a new school. You walk into class, and there is 30, who knows how many people in that class. Half of them are ignoring you. The other, a handful of them decided they don't like you to begin with, right off the bat. And the other ones are trying to be helpful, but they're trying to help 10 different people. And so it's, it's just human politics and courtroom drama whenever you go on any social media platform. And
Yeah.
I don't know how to change that. Every social media platform has their own culture, has their own religious beliefs, and I'm not talking
Yeah.
about spirituality. I'm talking about this is chameleon husbandry, and you go beyond that, and you're wrong. I I
There's so many contexts in which this dynamic plays out though, and it's not just chameleons. Like learning anything requires that you are subject to judgment, um, and especially early on. So I would say you should expect it. You're going to get judged as a new person, and just know that like people are going to judge you, and so like a say like, hey, I'm trying to learn something, and if they judge you, then they look like the jerk, right? Like it's not you that's the problem, it's them that's the problem. So just keep being you. Like I don't at the at don't be afraid of it. When it comes, it's their fault. Don't engage in that. Don't like respond to them. You don't need to try to like push back on it, but it'll just you can let it lay, let it simmer. People will see it for what it is, and you'll find people that then are sympathetic to you and want to help you. So it it don't focus on the jerk, focus on the goal, which is to learn and the like to get information from somebody who is going to be sympathetic to you. So don't like I'd say don't worry. I mean, it might be stressful to some degree, but like just keep going, keep learning, keep engaging, and when people are jerks, that's a reflection of their own character. It is what it is.
Yeah, Serenity, I think it comes down to, and this is not just, it's not like someone gives you a chameleon and gives you this advice, but uh, you're here now, and so I'll give you this.
Hmm.
Research the names instead of going to see what group is from group to group to group. Take a look at the names. Take a look at where the information is coming from. Research the names. Figure out where the good information that you respect comes from, and then gravitate towards that group, that source. What Jonathan said about the Academy, I've been doing this for 8 years, and I've been gathering all of this information. I've been stuffing it into the chameleonacademy.com website, and so there is a store of information for you that I will say is the best source of chameleon information that exists. And it's because it's not just me, it's from the entire community. The best of what the community can offer goes into that. And you
Hmm.
don't have ads popping up at you every time you try to open a page. So um, that is a place to find good information. But I recognize when you're excited about a chameleon, you want to join a community, which means social media and all of the uh,
Things that come
complications
with it. Yeah.
that come with being on social media. um,
Yeah. I
do you want to
I
say,
tend to focus on the positive. I mean, I know I've heard a lot of people say they get turned off to social media. Um, but I've met so many cool people on social media, and that's what keeps me going back is the the people that I can joke with about like random debates that have gotten a little heated and like whatever it is, like they remember we have this
Yes, you
experience
like
like,
that.
and I'm like, hey, whatever, that's fun. Like now I can we can reference it years later and joke about it. And the thing is, if you come with the mindset, like sometimes it is going to get escalate, like things are going to escalate. That's part of it, social media. But at the end of the day, you are just looking for people that you can rely on to share your experience, to learn from, and all that. I love that part. I think that's really valuable. And I might be lucky in that I grew up with the internet. Like I yeah, it doesn't bother me as much, but um, it I think that if you focus on the positive stuff and you search for that, you try to build that, then that's what you get out of it. But if you engage in the negative stuff and you start focusing on the fights, and like you start fighting people back and hold a grudge and can't ignore it, and then it's going to be a bad experience for you, because that's all you're going to do. Like you're going to go in there and it's all negative emotions and nonsense. So like you control the experience to some degree in what you choose to respond to and what you choose to engage in. So don't do that. Like just avoid it.
I want to say thank you, Surf Panther, Ryan, for supporting the show. And Ryan says breeding is about working with species that are mostly imported, so we have healthy captive bred animals. For those who don't know, Ryan is part of a small group working with First for Ustaleti and
Cool.
trying to establish that in captivity. And so, yeah, I really appreciate Ryan's efforts in that. There's a small group that is working with that. Gabriel, who's often here, is part of that, and so that is a wonderful thing to do.
Awesome project.
Let's see. Susan's says, I have a high-end pet store waiting for my panther babies. They are going to care for them like I tell them needed. When they come, spoke to them last year. So Susan is doing it right. Susan has has just hatched, as I hear, has just hatched her babies and already has a plan for where the babies of those babies she just hatched are going to go. That is working ahead, and that is the way to
Good stuff.
enjoy. Have a plan.
Yeah.
Okay, Thornhill's tripping has really enjoyed this. I'm trying to get through all the comments. We are so far behind in comments, so sorry for we're not ignoring you. Hunter John couldn't find him, not on Facebook. John, where can we find
But then
you?
iPardalis.com. It's also on Instagram, iPardalis.
And do you hang out on Chameleon forums?
Chameleon Forums, Drip Drop 12, I think. But yeah, I'm on there. I'm a sponsor of Chameleon Forums.
That's right.
So I'm listed in the sponsors if you want to find me there.
All right. Let's see. I'm gonna go. We're gonna, everybody. We're gonna be starting to close this down. If you have any last questions, please put them in the chat. Questions, comments, anything. Hello, Sarah. Well, we got to say hello to Sarah. So,
Yeah,
hi, Sarah.
sure.
Let's see. Okay, so I am new in this. I have my first Panther chameleon. Congratulations. And I want to be a breeder because I really love chameleons more. The Panther and I enjoy is not because the money, is more because I see myself in them. The thing, when you become a breeder, you are going to have to deal with babies. And there's a great joy in raising up babies, but then they have to go somewhere. And so if you breed your chameleons, you will now have to market. You will now have to get involved in sales. You will now have to get involved with customer service. And there's a lot that on top of that may or may not be enjoyable for you. And so really consider whether breeding will be the proper direction for your enthusiasm. I'll let John.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot more expensive to if all you're interested in is panther chameleons, it's a lot more expensive to breed them without having a sales focus of like finding homes for them and marketing and all this, um, than to just get like 5 of them up front. Um,
Yeah.
'Cause so just think about it, like, it's great to have a passion, but the money, the difference in your cost associated with that passion is gonna be a lot higher if you are not going to engage in finding, um, good homes on the other side of it, because you're gonna end up spending $25,000 up front to get that thing going, and then you're like, yeah, but I don't really want to sell them. Well, how do you get that's 25,000? You could do that a lot cheaper, with by just going and getting 5 males or something. Like,
Yeah, and that's something to consider. Instead
yeah,
of breeding a, a, a morphs of
yeah. So I don't know if we lost Bill or everyone lost me. Uh, am I left alone here? Oh, okay, cool. It's just me. They so Yeah, I mean, I think there were a couple more questions that were outstanding. Um, the there was a question by Matthew about first for minor. Um, my first for minor project I'm probably not going to have any uh, thing available until 2024, because my last group I let go of too many females, Matt, and this time I'd like to really raise all of them to adulthood. Um, Try to breed as many as I can to ensure that I can keep the project going, um, because they're a lot more challenging to keep going than panthers. And so I didn't keep as many females as I should have from my first 2 clutches, and I have 2 incubating right now that I plan to just keep keep them all, um, just to make sure that I can get to a point where it makes sense to send them out to people. So that's where that project's at. It's a lot of fun. Um, this year they're breeding a lot easier for me than they were last year, so it's a good sign. Um, but yeah, that's where that's at. Um, I think that the the conversation is probably wrapping up, guys. But if you have any more questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. And yeah, Jake, it's tough. I had my male. I have 2 males right now that are really enthusiastic about breeding, which is awesome. But last year, I had 3 males that just didn't seem interested. I think part of it is I got them into leap habitats this year, all year round, and had their humidity higher. They're across the board, and I had light cycles. So over the winter, I had them on a shorter light cycle, and I've been slowly increasing the light cycle this year throughout the spring, and they just came alive. They wanted to breed this spring much earlier than last year. So it was having the humidity cycle improved, the light cycle improved, to kind of tell them it was time to start breeding, and I saw that um, have a huge impact on my miner. The panthers are not like that. Like they're not as sensitive to those things, but miners for sure. Yeah, some of them were the same males, Matt. So they'd been through the two different uh, treatments essentially, and this strategy seemed to work a lot better. Leap leap habitats and uh, higher humidity, higher ambient humidity, higher nighttime humidities, and then actually trying to purposefully increase the amount of rainfall, increase the amount of water at the same time that I was giving them more light throughout the day. So that that was really important for them, and they've been very eager after going through that, which makes total sense. I mean, that's what they experience in the wild. So it was something that I didn't do a great job of last year, and I only got 2 clutches. This year, I hope to get more, a lot more than two. Um, so yeah, Panthers was it was the fact that there were so many really good options for captive bred. Hey, Bill's back.
Oh my goodness. I am sorry. I don't know. The internet just crashed. Oh
That's all
god.
good. I thought it was me, so for a while I was saying, "Hey guys, am I still here?" And then they said yes. So,
Okay, yes, thank you. Keep going. Keep
but
going.
yeah, so um, Panthers. It was because of the locales, the color options that were out there, the high availability of captive bred animals. I wanted to get into wild caught when I felt ready to do so, and so I purposely picked a locale that was very common in Ambelobe, a phenotype that was also pretty common in yellow-bodied blue bar, because I wanted to be able to selectively breed from captive bred stock without having to kind of jump in the deep end with wild caught. So that was my first thought, was panthers are um, highly available, great variability, lots of options, and it was just amazing. It was a lot of fun learning about their locales. And besides the individually raising yellow body blue bar stuff, the third dimension I'd say of the hobby that I've really kind of gotten deep into is genetics. And so I found the genetics of panther chameleons to be really cool, in that there's an open question about speciation across locales. Um, we don't really know what you get when you combine certain combinations of panthers as far as their colors go. And I wanted to learn more about that. So that was part of what drew me to Panthers. I thought that was cool. And then it was later that I realized that a lot of people poo poo on us Panther breeders as, um, you know, been there, done that, type thing. But I still enjoy it, and I'm probably going to keep at it. So.
I love Panthers. They're
But
just so
you know what I mean, Bill. Like people who are really into chameleons, they're like, oh, you breed panthers. There's kind of a
well,
stigma to it.
yeah, well, we've got this thing in the chameleon community that we are so spoiled that I mean, the three most incredible species of chameleons, Jacksons with the horns, Panther with the colors, Veils with the casque. It's like, they're
Yeah.
so common. I want something that's a little brown and nondescript because that's rare. Oh,
Yeah, I know.
oh,
And then when you breed it, you realize, oh geez, this is really hard. This is
yeah.
even harder. Like, so that's the thing that I'm careful about. It's like I know how hard it is to breed the ones that are beautiful. It's like I can't imagine how hard it is to do some of the other stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it gets I've been doing some of the harder stuff and yeah, it's not as easy.
Yeah. Um,
But you've been doing some harder stuff too. I guess you are probably already talked about the minor.
yeah, yeah, I was talking about how I was able to have a lot more success with them this year. Um, so through varying light cycles and humidity, um, they've been breeding easily for me this year. It was very hard last year, but this year, same animals, um, but breeding well and breeding regularly. So that's I've got 3 pairs that are all breeding, and last year it took me into the midsummer. I had to get them outside and get them exposed to the natural um, humidity and light cycles outside. But I was able to do that earlier this year inside and
Okay.
get them going so that they're they're really doing much better for me this year. So I'm happy about that.
You had to take them outside to get them to breed?
Yeah, last year they were not interested in breeding inside in the early spring, like right about now. Um, but but then they'd started to breed once they'd been outside for a month or two.
I found that is as well. They wouldn't breed for me
Yeah,
inside, but the exact
yeah,
minute I put them outside, bam.
exactly. Yeah. So I took that from last year and I said, okay, well, there's got to be something that I can do inside that will emulate that so that they can start. So I was like, okay, I was very conscious about humidity uh, in the winter and increasing the humidity with the light. So as I started to increase the length of the days through the spring, I was also misting more and adding more manually adding more water, um, getting the humidity up, and I got them breeding this year much earlier, and they're doing it inside, which wasn't true last year. I also didn't have leap habitats last year for like a more better control of humidity, um, which is a difference this year. I was able to control humidity and keep it higher, uh, both ambient and nighttime.
Mhm.
So those two things I think were key is like the light cycle, having humidity be higher in general. Um, but yeah, I mean it was very frustrating last year, and I think I'm pretty excited about this because I can see it's different. It's good.
Mhm. All right.
So
Yeah, I'm
yeah,
excited to see what you produce. I mean, that's looking forward to seeing that.
yeah,
Wow.
I've got a couple that should hatch over the next month. But I based on their behavior already this year, it seems like it's going to be a better season. So
Nice. I'd love to see more people be able to work with minor
yep.
and get that going.
Yeah, and I would say shout out to Leap for that. They were key to come up with
The
the new
cages.
caging design, and yeah, I think that was helpful for this species.
Okay. All right, everybody. We are coming to the end of the show here. I want to thank you all so much for being such a great audience and being as active in the comments and giving us great comments and questions. It's been wonderful having you here. And Jonathan, love having your perspective. You are what I enjoy in a breeder, and
Not
so
holding us back, huh?
not
I
holding us. Yeah, I got little bit of a problem when I got breeders saying, no, don't go forward, don't look at the nature. We're happy where we are. So
I mean, I
yeah.
understand where they're coming from, but it's
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I straddle every time I come up with a great idea and push husbandry forward. It's like, ugh, now I've got to change everything. And so, I do it to myself. So,
You're like, oh, this is good. I've done this before. Ah,
so everybody, if you want to come back, next time I'm live will be Tuesday on Instagram, 5 p.m. Pacific. And so you can join the conversation again.
cool.
Jonathan, well, is not planned to join me at that point. If you're ever on Instagram around 8 p.m. your time, just come on
Jump
by
on.
and you're welcome to jump on and say hello to everybody.
Cool.
So, all right, everybody, thank you very much. And we'll see you later.